Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm Frank Gao, joined by my co-host, Matt Gunlock. Today, our guest is Brendan Souder. He is the head of Range Project Group International. We've had him on before. They operate out of the Florida Panhandle. They do a lot of local matches, but they also do matches internationally. And the reason we got in touch with Brendan is he comes up and does his day and night format match out in Shadowhawk in West Virginia. And we just recently attended the third iteration of that match. Awesome time. Both AMTP and the Marine Corps shooting team has gone down to it. But the topic of this particular discussion is Brendan brought out a term, Matchenomics, the last time we recorded. And as a match director dealing with the financial side and also the planning side, and also someone who goes to a lot of major matches, we realized that Brendan has a lot of insight into what goes into the fiscal fabric of a match, so to speak. So we'll just jump right into it. Matchenomics. So you organize matches domestically and internationally. What are some things about the financial side of planning that differ from some of the other things like training and some of the other business aspects that you've been involved with?
So first thing first, if you're running matches, a lot of times if you're not careful, you would actually end up running a charity match. And I say that to all the people that look at a match fee and then multiply the shooter count and say to themselves, hey man, this guy must be making a fortune off of this match. I've been guilty of it myself. I've looked at other people's matches that have taken a $200 match fee and they had 300 shooters. And I made the math in my head. I was like, wow, this is great. This guy should be making a killing. On the contrary, you as a director or somebody who's putting this event on, you handle a lot of money, but the economics portion of it is you are the person that takes in the money and then you spend it on things that support the match, whether that's anything from your targets, your paint, supporting your staff, feeding your staff, making sure that everything is the way it needs to be. And at the end of the day, trying to find a way to put gas back in your vehicle to get back to the house. So these are the things that we have to think about as match directors. But, honest to God, it's like one of these things, you're throwing a party and we're just trying to get everybody to have, smiles and make it out of there with having the shirt on our back when we get done. So Matchenomics was a term that we kind of came up with internally, where it was making sure we documented what it was that we were putting into the match and making almost like a spreadsheet for match directors to almost make an appraisal. I got this idea like probably halfway through running matches, because I would run a match and I would say, wow, I'm going to make, a couple $1,000 running this match. And then I'd get done at the end of the match and I'd have a couple $100. And the reason why is because matches cost money. Matches cost money before you run the match, during the match, and after the match. And there's different phases. So those three phases that we're talking about, there's always a cost that's associated with that, if that makes any sense. So my idea for Matchenomics is to, one, write a somewhat of a paper, somewhat of a how-to, and give something to match directors that they can use for planning. Like, this is a planning tool, and this is something to make you understand what it is that you're taking on before you actually decide you want to run a match. So Matchenomics, it's the handling of funds, distribution of funds to put on these events and make magic happen.
I just want to kind of jump in. Like, I was approached, asked to run a certain type of match, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I started thinking about it, and it was everything that you just kind of said. And it's like, you know, they for the affiliation fee, it would have been so much money. And that's an affiliation fee for the entire year. And it wasn't a simple USPSA $75 a year. We're talking, you know, a lot more money. I'll leave it at
Zeros.
that.
Lots of
Yes.
zeros.
Yes, zeros. And then, you know, you think about it, do I want to do this once a month? Do I want to do this, you know, like 4 times a year, quarterly, something like that? And at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to do this at all because, you know, at the end of the day, the affiliation fee, then you have to pay for the range if you don't have your own range. You know, and that could be anywhere from $500 to $1,000. And then how many people am I going to be able to get into the match doing what they want me to do? 25 people. Okay, well, I would have to charge $100 to $150 per person. That doesn't give me a lot of money, and it's a local match. So how many people actually want to pay that for what we're doing? And then you're talking about all the other equipment that's required for it, then the targets, and then big thing most people don't think about is insurance. You know, if you're doing a venue, you're looking at maybe $1,000 insurance. So at the end of the day, my net gain would have been maybe $1,000, and I would have probably brought in somewhere like $6,000, you know, $4,000. And it's like people are like, oh, I can make a lot of money off of that. If you're a match director, you're not going to make any money. And if you're making money, you're not putting money where it needs to be.
That definitely can be semi-true statement. So what we find out when we're running these matches is there are mistakes.
Or I'll
There
say
are
this, let me rephrase. You're not getting rich. You're making money, but you don't expect to get rich off of a match. Like,
yeah, that's fair. That's
yeah,
fair.
yeah,
That's
like
definitely fair.
because you could look at a lot of the older matches that we're on, and people were charging like $300 for a match fee. 250 to 300 people would show up. You know, let's say, okay, I brought in $90,000. Where's all that money going? Because if you have a professionalized staff, well, you need billeting for them. You need to pay all
Yep,
their meals, kind of like what you said earlier.
absolutely. And that's kind of where there's a planning pitfall. And man, being in the army and then, being in the leadership position and planning for J sets or missions where, we have to get there, we have to stay at a hotel, we have to set up this training, we need op on, we need all these things. Like that has definitely been a strength for running matches. And it's given me a pragmatic idea of what it actually takes. In the beginning, I was infatuated with the idea that, hey, I don't care how much money I make. I just want people to have a good time. And then I probably got to a point where I look like Matthew McConaughey in that movie where he's like skinny and like cracked out,
Yep.
Dallas
smoking a
Buyers
cigarette.
Club.
Yep, that. Yeah, yeah. I was like, oh my god, this is terrible. Why do I want to do this? Oh wait, ready to be hurt again. Let's do it again. And what was really cool here was that I had started getting people to help me staff, and these guys were not only staff that would come for the match. These are friends and became like part of a family, and we were moving in the same direction. And whatever I got, I would share with them, and so on and so forth. So we've had good success with that, getting people to jump in with us here at local level. And even when we went to West Virginia, we had a bunch of guys come up that helped us out. And I think that's something that helps us out a bunch. But when you run these things, you have to do a cost estimate on what it is. And one thing that match directors and Matt, going back to your point, you said, hey, I made $1,000, right? For the day and night match, I probably had no less than 80 hours of my personal time into that. That's answering emails, that's building practice score, that's building stages, that's promoting, making flyers, that's all these things that drive up. And none of these guys ever figure out the most important question is, how much is your time worth? Time is the most precious thing that you have, and you can't make more time. So these guys get the idea, is like, oh, you must be rich off of making the match. It's like, I made $5 an hour, bud. It's okay. Don't worry. This is what I do for a living. I run matches in training, and this is my job, So some people would say, hey, well, you're charging too much for a match. And it was like, have you seen other matches? And I, get into the margin of like, hey, well, can I get payback for my time at least? And some of these things I have to take a loss on it, because the matches it's a fun thing, but it's also a marketing thing for us to get our training going. Our biggest profit at RPGI is actually the training, not the matches. The matches keep things going. The matches keep the vibe alive, which is really cool. But we get people who want to train up to be good for the matches. We get people that ask us for tactical training after the match. So the matches are a big marketing event for us, and it's also a tool for engagement with the shooting community and keep us relevant. But again, financially speaking, you're not going to get rich off of matches. You may make some money here and there, but I would tell you guys 100% that you're paying for the matches you're bringing, and you're paying for the next match. Also, it's always getting put back into the machine. A thing happened today. I got a phone call from a guy that asked me about the match. He's like, I have a question about the match.
Which one? Which one?
Yeah, I just kind of laughed. I was like, which one? If you look, okay, tell me which one it is. And he was asking about a match just like next year, which is good. It's cool. So yeah.
I just thought of another question. So the first match you ran that we ran into you at up at Shadowhawk was just the night portion. And then, so was running that match just like for you, was it just about putting feelers out to see if like a series of matches was going to be tenable in an area like West Virginia? You're all the way down in Florida. So like going into that, what were your expectations? And then after that first iteration, what made you realize that you could continue to hold matches up at Shadowhawk and that they could keep turning a profit?
So what I did in the beginning was I used the first blackout match to run a test, like a test fire almost, and send a couple rounds out, see what connects. It was a recon. And what I realized on that match was that type of activity didn't actually exist in the area. And if it did, it really wasn't done right by that point in time. And I don't mean to be like that. We treat all of our matches like level 2, level 3 major matches. If you come and shoot one down here in the Panhandle, you got to show up like, this is a major match. Yeah, it's a level 1. Don't worry. We did that to get a recon. And what we realized in that area was people in your area, they know what they want. People in that area, and not to take away from other areas, but I know specifically in your area, like right now, our Cinco de Mayo match already has a ton of shooters signed up, and that isn't until May, right? So people up there, they know what they want. And if they know you're squared away and you're going to take care of them as a match staff and be organized and have, hand out trophies and like have a professional staff, they know that they want to sign up and they want to have that experience. That is definitely a great area to run matches. I would say once we did the first one, we realized that, hey, this hasn't really been done up here. Let's keep it going. And every single time we've made the matches bigger and bigger. So definitely a great recon and get some intel on what's going on up there. And it was phenomenal.
Yeah, when especially having, you consistently fill 2 full squads of Marines who want to be able to train in under white light or with their nods. But yeah, I mean, I had a set of nods, and the only other match that was actually decent was all the way down North Carolina. So yeah, right. Having that up in Virginia was huge. You mentioned, getting into match directing initially and just being like, I just want to put on a match for everybody. At what point, like you've put on so many matches at this point, at what point do you feel like you actually had it down in terms of conceptualizing the financial like framework of a match?
So that really didn't happen until I got closer to getting out of the Army. So probably first part of January of 2022, getting out, and what it was I hadn't gotten my retirement. I got out of the Army and they didn't do a retirement check and I went through the whole disability process or whatnot. Not trying to get in too much into that, but I didn't get a paycheck for 3 months, dude. So anything that I ran was directly taking care of myself and my family. And it was very real. I took a short government contract gig, Costa Rica, that went right to my house payment, everything. I trained as many people. I was on the street looking at people outside a coffee shop, yelling at them, "Hey, you want to do some gun training? Let's go." It became real. So then it was like, you got to make sure that everything is tight. And what I did was I started using a assessment worksheet that I would use for J sets. Like, hey, what does this cost? Okay, what will this make? Okay, be careful, and for a lot of guys, that maybe people can speak to this when they see this, but it's not so much the big items that you will find yourself like going and barely breaking even or going into negative. It's going to be like, oh, I bought too many shirts. Oh, I bought 3 trophies that there isn't anybody signed up for that division. Things like that. Oh, hey, I did XYZ. I played the little risk game, and then I got bit on t-shirts like 3 times, right? And so now, what we do, we just say, hey, it's going to be included in the match fee, and everybody gets a shirt anyways. So that's how we kind of figure that out. But definitely January of 2022 was like, hey, I've got it down packed. I know what it takes to run these things. And there's been some matches that I can get away with not making any money, and that's happened here at the farm, my place now, because I don't have to pay a range fee. This is my place. I could set the stages up and sit on them. If 20 shooters show up, like we had the last match was a tough gunner. I think this was definitely a planning thing during Thanksgiving Day weekend. We had 20 shooters that came out, and I think that match normally gets it'll get 40. The next time we run it, it'll get 40, 50. But those are some of the things I can eat that. I can definitely eat that. But going up to West Virginia or going to Trinidad and Tobago or Colombia or, wherever the next place is, it has to be worked out well beforehand, and it's got to be worth it. So, knowing that population exists and then they want what you have is a very important piece of intel that goes into the planning cycle for finances. So
For sure. I'd like to tease out a few specifics that we mentioned. So you run USPSA, you run PCSL, you run your own format. How much does affiliation fee factor into all this? I gotta tell you, as a match director, I started looking at a year long. If I ran USPSA every single month for the entire year instead of half and half with PCSL, I mean, it'd be close to $3,000 and just the activity fees and the affiliation fees. And I'm looking at it now and I'm just like, do I really get $3,000 worth of value from USPSA as an organization? That's an entirely different conversation. But I know for a fact that people are going to fill up all the slots if I just run PCSL pure. So is that a consideration for you, or has it become a consideration?
it absolutely has. I mean, I love USPSA. Don't get me wrong. I love shooting it. The pay me per shooter fee, no matter what you do, is definitely something that it's kind of, hey, I got to pay, what is it, $1.50 per shooter, no matter what, no classifier, right?
Yeah.
And then let's just say I run a classifier, then we're at $3 per shooter. Well, as a match director, you still have to get targets, and depending on where you get them from, you're basically going to pay $1 a target anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Shipping and all this other stuff included. So then you have to get pacers.
Yeah.
You should have bags. You should have 3 cans of paint. All these things, right? So yeah, it starts to become a factor because it's an expense. So you're like, hey man, what is it about this? It's what is it really doing for me? It's not that great of a thing if you think about it. When you spend $1,500 to $3,000 a year for an affiliation, or just to have shooters, your major match, you're shooting a major match and you run all these shooters, and then you end up paying a ton of money, for affiliation fees. Those are things that definitely make it hey, this is definitely a decision. So PTSO, economically speaking, for Matchenomics, it's a very desirable format. You could run it hit factor or time plus and 1 gun, 2 gun, however you want to do it. The thing is, you don't have to pay an affiliation fee. what there isn't really any back into it just yet. It's just Max and a couple of his buddies. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal because if you look at USPSA, it's hard, and they got so much stuff going on. It's hard for them to really support you. You know, I could go on and on about USPSA, what I think they should be doing. I still think it's a great sport. It's completely scalable. I just don't like the idea of paying a bunch of money for, somebody to shoot the match affiliation fee. When Steel Challenge is the dollar a shooter. I think a dollar shooter wouldn't be so bad, but even $1.50 is like, hey man, like, why is it $1.50 and Steel Challenge is $1? That's weird.
Yeah,
right.
I get it.
Every Steel Challenge stage is a classifier stage, by the way.
It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's partly, I don't know. It just doesn't, it looks fun. But it's not really my cup of tea. Yeah, so I I fucked it up the first time I ran a USPSA match because I left like everyone who didn't show up to the match, I didn't like delete them. So I had all these like ghost people, and then USPSA tried to charge me for them. I was just like, hell no, like I'm not paying you extra money. That was mostly on me, but yeah, it definitely adds up. How much do so you mentioned just you have a crew at this point, right? Some of them are people that actually like train people with you, but you also have like a cadre of people, like for example Spence, who's up here like the Northeast. He's going to come up and like basically help out with the match whenever you're running one in West Virginia. How liberal are you with like compensating matches and letting people shoot for free, or what other incentives do you basically? Because when I took over the match, Tim Petchek was like, dude, just throw out comp matches. Like, it doesn't cost you a whole lot, but if you give someone something for free, they're going to be more likely to come back and help you. So how does that factor in for you?
So anybody that's part of the staff for RPGI, if they're helping out, they shoot the match for free. That's one thing. And then I feed them at the match. And then this is something, this is kind of match director dependent, but what I like to do, if I have good sponsorship for the match, I'll have a prize table for the shooters, and I'll have a separate prize table for the staff. And then I try to put something in there so everybody gets something, whether it's like, hey, there's trigger or a buffer or something, anything like that. Somebody walks away with something, because it's rare nowadays for sponsorship to equate in dollar bills. It's usually in equipment. So if we have the ability, we basically separate the prize table. We give out trophies and prizes to the masses, and then we have a separate staff pool. But then with the matches like the one coming up, the Blackout Nationals in next November, I'm gonna go ahead and give those guys like a stipend so they can get a hotel. I'll probably stay on site and set up my ops in there at Shadowhawk, and then everybody else to get like the hotel rooms or whatnot, however they want to do it. But I'll give them a stipend. So I'm trying to make it a little bit better, especially if guys travel. So most of the time, guys will, when it's like, hey, you don't have to come up to this one, but if you want to, I'll feed you. You shoot the match for free, and then prize table stuff we'll separate, and we'll do a staff. It's funny because there's a couple of guys that don't really staff with me that much, and they kept asking the question like, hey, bro, can we put our ticket in for the raffle? Where's my raffle ticket for the raffle draw at the match? And I was like, hey, just hang tight. And like, wait, are we going to get anything? I was like, it's all good, buddy. Just relax. Trust me. And then one of my older staff guys like, hey, man, Brendan's got you. Just take it easy. So then we all get in that little room that Len's got up in the front there. And we do our mini AAR. I'm like, hey, guys, all right, let's go ahead and draw a ticket right now. And the guy's like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Wait, we're drawing a ticket now? I'm like, yeah, this is y'all's raffle. This is different. He's like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yeah, it's like, I'm not trying to keep you out of the raffle. Just we have a separate one for you guys. Take care of y'all. Make sure, we do that to make sure they know we appreciate them and stuff, because it's, man, that shit's hard. Honestly, running the match, especially 14 stages in a day. That's a little much.
Yeah.
But
I think every match director has a different way that they kind of take care and compensate, which is great. Like, there's many different ways. Aaron Hayes out in Texas, he gives his ROs $400 and takes care of the match fee, stuff like that. They walk the prize table. Whenever Andy Horner was running Blue Ridge 3-Gun Championship, He took care of your hotel fee. He took care of lunch and dinner. And then you shot the match free. You walked the prize table, and then whatever was left over, he took care of the ROs all over again, saying, "Hey, we have these prizes left over. Who wants this? Who wants that?" And like people just raised their hand, and it was a very professional format. Jason Byerly, he, like, if it's down at the Clinton house, what he'll do is he'll keep everybody there on site. He gives everybody a match pack. You get 200 rounds of rifle, pistol, and shotgun, and
Nice.
and then you get your food taken care of. So it's like everybody has their own different ways of taking care of people and compensating people, and it's like you said, it's a very hard job to do. Like, people don't realize how hard it is being an RO, having to deal with that many people, having to put that many miles on your feet. You could be walking anywhere from 12 to 18 miles in a day, and your body's not used to that. I mean, I RO'd probably the first, I would say last, out of the 10 years I've been competing, last year was the first time I really didn't RO anymore.
Oh, wow.
But
it's definitely hard to do. It's probably one of the most, for me, it's the thing
thankless.
that I put a lot of thought into it. Yeah, it
It's
is
most
thankless.
thankless.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
But so important to
Mhm.
running a quality match. Like, yeah, you just can't do it without your ROs. So how do you deal with like deadlines, as they refer to like match payments prior to the match? Because we've talked about Matchenomics, we talked about you talked about finances pre, during, and post, but
Mhm.
I'd have to imagine, like, you did say a little bit of like the previous match is paying for the next match, but I'd have to imagine that some of the money for the current match is going to factor in to the planning cycle for that match. So how important is it for shooters to meet a deadline for you? Because you got to order targets, you got to pay the range, and you got to take care
Yeah.
of all this other preparatory business.
So the first match fees that come in, that goes into any logistics that I need. So if there's a range fee, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get an estimate on the range fee. I'll get an estimate on the food. I'll get an estimate on the shirts. I'll get an estimate on the trophies, and anything that basically hey, this is absolutely what I need, right? And then everything else will get bought right away. That is something that happens right off the rip. I don't take that money and plan it for anything else. It's just like, hey, these are the things that I need. And then from there, as I get going, like, there may be other like fees that come up or other things that might come up. And then I'll start stacking that into a different account so that like I don't touch that for anything else. So going back to the whole thing of like, hey, this match is paying for the match that's going on in the next match. That only happens if there's money left over, by the way, at the end.
Gotcha.
So it's like, hey, I'm going to make this money on this match. Okay, I'm not making this money on this match. This money is going into rehabbing the equipment, buying a couple more tablets, timers, XYZ, preparing the range for, let's say, a level 2. Like we just added 4 bays out here, and then we got 10 bays, 10 practical shooting bays at the farm. That was pretty expensive. So some of the money that's been made is in a different account has went towards that. So you have to be very cautious, like how you spend that money, and you hold on to it, because that, again, post match, there may be something that comes up, that, hey, somebody destroyed this on Randy and Lynn's property. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to pay for it,
Yeah.
because they treat us really good, and we got to take care of those guys. So the deadlines. One of the things that sucks is guys will sign up, and usually I'll let shooters pay at the match. I'll leave that function kind of ready. If it's a local match here, like local meaning like it's going to be here, and like if they don't show up or if they don't pay me, it's okay. I can eat that. The thing that sucks about that, though, is it takes a slot from somebody else. So locally, if it's a big match locally here, then I like to get everything tightened up like 2 weeks before the match happens, because otherwise I'll have extra t-shirts, I'll order extra chow, I'll have extra trophies. Now, when we're traveling outside of the country, or we're going to, say, West Virginia, like, I like that stuff to be done and paid for electronically before we even hit the road. So we have operational funds for say your Airbnbs for the staff and the chow, the mileage, and the things that people might need help with. Last minute Lowe's runs. You know, as a match director, you've probably seen this, but if you're running a major match, like you'll probably hit Lowe's once or twice a couple days before, and you'll spend. I mean, dude, I probably spent $1,200 at Lowe's the last 2 days before the day and night match.
Yes.
You know, and that's, you know, that match has a lot of logistics involved with it because of the fact that, you know, we want to have all the chamber flags, we want to have the chem light, we want to have at least 2 chem lights planning wise per shooter just in case. We put chem lights on the grounds and mark the areas. You know, there's all these things, tape, staples, you name it. There's just so much stuff. So, you know, you'll spend a bunch of money. We buy water bottles for everybody because sometimes people don't like drinking hose water, but that's all good. I heard that at the Mississippi match from a guy who's a really good shooter. I just kind of laugh at him. I grew up on hose water. So
Same.
Most of us
Florida.
mhm,
Yep.
right. I
Same.
drank hose water as a kid.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm good. Look at me. I'm okay.
It
I
was
made it.
cold. It was cold compared to being outside.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a Mississippi Classic, I think like a year and a half ago or whenever the last ran. And this guy is pretty good shooter. He's got a dog, a really good shooter. They shoot together. I'm not gonna say their names. And I said, "Hey, what's up, man?" He's like, "Yeah, it's good, except for this hose water we're drinking." I was like, "What? The cooler?" He's like, "Yeah, they put hose water in there. They can't even buy bottled water." So then, as a match director, I got immediately scared. I was like, "I got to buy these bottles of water just in case this guy shoots one of my matches." I'm just kidding. It's a little bit easier to buy the bottles. Kind of.
It
It's
is.
expensive. That does get expensive though. Like last year, whenever we were running Duskin, you know, one of our friends, you know, he has his own business that he runs, but you know, he hit us up. He was like, "Hey, what do you guys need? I want to make a donation."
Mhm.
Okay, well, we need Gatorades and we need water bottles for the RO staff. And he brought a whole pallet of water and Gatorade in for us. Like, if we paid for that out of pocket, that would have been expensive.
Yeah, Lowe's is my go-to for water. You can
Mhm.
buy that 24 pack for like I think it's like $4.98. I use the military discount.
Mhm.
You know, they thank me for my service, and I have a cart full of like bottles of water. And depending on what time of the year it is, you know, it's like okay, well, if it's freezing cold outside, you know, 2 cases of water per stage should be fine. If it's like summertime, like I think the Duskin match was in the summertime, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
June.
was.
Oh, dude, yeah, you get. Oh man, that's a lot of water. That's a
Mhm.
lot of electrolytes, definitely. So it's a
Mhm.
factor. Those are factors, you know, into that. So, you know, if it gets, you know, get to the point, you know, where you're trying to figure out like timing, the environment, and all this other stuff. So, um, yeah. So, you know, having this in mind when you're like trying to plan, like for most part, if I'm running something here in Florida Panhandle, I try to think about, you know, maybe 8 stages, 7, 8 stages, and then having like 10 to 12 shooters per squad. That's usually like a good day for us down here if we feel that matchup. If it's somewhere like up by you guys, if I could plan for 10 stages, 10 squads with like 11 to 12 shooters per, then that means I'll be able to financially make it up and make it back and have money for their post match like cost or maybe going into the next match. But that's usually it. Like 10 stages and 10 squads of shooters, you know, looking at a 100-person match is usually, if we could put 100 people in a match and the match fee of about 150 and going to West Virginia, it's worth it for us. I think we can make it work out. And that's with no sponsorship, by the way.
Mhm.
Sponsors, that's a different thing. And I think that sponsors are very, very, it could be a critical factor if you want to make the match even better. The products that these guys send out and like the support that they give is something that's like, oh my God, thank God you did this because now we could do bigger trophies, you know, or we could
Yep.
do better shirts. We could, hey, we could pay for better chow, something like that. You know, there's always things that you can improve. Nobody in a match is ever going to complain that like, hey, if you bring food out there, even if they don't like the food, at least food was there, water was there, you had good bathrooms, you know, it was comfortable. It wasn't like a pain in the ass, like no parking and all this other stuff. So those are the things that kind of bite you in the ass if you're a match director. If you don't feed the guys and they're out there all day, man, that's a bad thing to kind of do as a match director. So I had that happen to me once. I had a chow hall or chow truck plan to come out to support one of the matches, and they just straight up stood me up, man.
Damn.
Now, the great thing was that the shooters didn't pay for the chow. It wasn't part of the match fee, but the bad thing about it was, this where I'm at the farm, I think the nearest food is like 15 minutes away, and it's just a pain. You know what I mean? So it's really good to have a food truck on site. I think that's always a good thing, but it's hard to plan, especially guys want to make a profit on the chow, it's hard to get that for those dudes. So,
Yeah, for sure. The barbecue caterers that you found for the day and night were good. They gave us a lot of food. Like a lot of us were fighting off the itis after we had
oh
that
man,
dinner.
yeah, that
was
was heat 5 pounds of meat or something on the plate, man.
it
He's like, hey, you
was-
hungry? I'm like, I gotta eat all that.
we're just straining the structural integrity of those styrofoam
Oh yeah.
trays. But it was good, man. Like yeah, and us as shooters, like my squad specifically, we didn't really get that break for chow because we were the dead squad first. But by the time we got shooting, yeah, we're definitely ready for that food. Give you a chance to vent a little bit, but what other shooter habits besides people waiting till the last minute to pay make your life just that much harder as a match director? I mean, you're basically it's customer service, right? You're catering to people. You're talking to someone about a match that's like a year in advance that you just kind of put on the books, and really you're not like that's not the immediate concern. That's not the closest alligator to the boat. But yeah, what dumb shit do shooters do that just pisses you off?
Oh man, like guys will, like, hey, we're traveling to West Virginia from Florida, and I'll put at the bottom like no refunds, right? So we put that out there because how did this guy tell me? And did I tell you guys before? Like somebody asked me like what it was like. It was like Guns N' Roses is putting on a concert, and then all of a sudden you can't make the concert. So then you hit up the band. You're like, hey, I'm not going to make the concert. Can I get a refund? Guns N' Roses is not going to come back in town and play that concert again for you, or they're not going to give you a refund. Like, hey, bud, like you're coming to the concert, you bought a ticket, you got to go. And knowing that these guys are on the road, so like you're putting on this event, you're coming from many many hours away, and you say no refunds, and then you get somebody's like, hey man, can I get a refund? And you're like, holy crap, like I really want to help them out, but we say, hey, no refunds, and then you'll get guys that'll say it. Basically, at that point, I'm trying to convince them to sell their ticket, if you will, to somebody else, so that we don't have to go through the refund process. Because as soon as we get the money from the match, we're planning it. Like I said, the first couple of big items that we do, are like trophies, match fees, targets, logistics, and stuff like that. So that's kind of the thing that we deal with a bunch. The other thing that people will do, I think, is, hey, when I do the pay at the match and then I turn that off and then I ask people to go ahead and make payment for the match. The last match I had where this kind of occurred was up there, and there was a couple guys that like were unreachable for a minute and they just never responded. I was like, hey buddy, are you still shooting the match? Because at a certain point as a match director, when you're running a big match, you should start balancing those squads like right away, dude, right away. You shouldn't wait until like match day to like really, really try to play that game. And that's where it really matters. Like if, for example, we're running a big match and like one squad has, 9 people and then the other squad has 14 people, that's a problem. So the closer we can get to balancing those out is best. So if a guy or gal doesn't respond back to like, hey, this, that, and the other, I'm not shooting the match, you can go ahead and delete me, that's a problem, and we use the practice score function to send that automated message out to the shooters, but sometimes they just don't reply.
Right.
So that's usually a big deal. But the hardest thing is like letting people pay at the match when you're doing it outside of the States or outside of your home range. So that's definitely been a thing. I think that's been probably one of my biggest things. Or I can't, what's the other one? I can't put my credit card online because I don't want to put my information out there on Stripe payment. And it's like, man.
Every time you swipe your card, it gets out there.
Yeah. So it's like, hey man, like, what, what? I don't use PayPal or Venmo. I'm off the grid. Like I've never heard that.
Cool.
I don't know.
You don't want to participate in society, but you want to participate in my match. I don't know what to tell you.
I've heard stuff like that. Yep. Oh, I can't pay you until I get there because I only do cash. One guy tried to pay me in silver dollars or some kind of no silver. The guy had silver. That's what it was. Like, I got all kinds of silver. I could pay my match fee. And like, I don't even know what to do with that. Where am I going to take this? What?
Pawn Shop's not going to give you a premium for it.
Yeah, go get like taken down in the price. But I've had weird things like that. But it just sucks when somebody doesn't show up for the match. The no show when you're trying to get everything balanced, a no show that doesn't call or like right before their no show and waste and just like you call their name during roll call and it's nothing and you're like crap, okay, that's a problem. If they've paid already, like it makes it less of a problem because like all right, well they've already paid. The only problem that kind of emanates from that is that now our squads are starting to become unbalanced and that could be a problem. The other thing that gets me right before the match is a guy that wants to shoot with his friends because they're all shooting together and it's like, hey, you already have maxed out in the squad, can you just add one more? And you're like, man, I would but can't. And it becomes like a thing. It's that like little dance. And yeah, customer service, you gotta try to help out these guys as much as possible, but that's definitely a thing that hurts quite a bit.
So one thing I'll say that I've noticed has helped other matches is having a blurb in there after they register. Is if you have a group of people that you want to squad with from the beginning and you don't want to wait until squatting opens, just send me an email with the list of names of who you want to shoot with, and that way we can get you pre-squatted. And that's helped a lot of matches out and just determining and creating, just taking away that whole other aspect. If you know who you want to shoot with, let us know. We'll put you in a squad together so you don't have to deal with squatting when it opens.
That makes sense. And then you get the Marine Corps shooting team that wants to have 20 guys on the same team.
Man, dude, I try to do right by you, but I don't know. Matt and I talked about this the other day. It's like herding cats with that crew, and you get onesies and twosies. Like Matt's feeling it because he lobbied on their behalf for the fall brawl. But we're not going to get into that. Yeah, it's customer service. The hard part about the guy who wants to get on the squad that's already full is like the right thing to do is to like approach that squad and be like, hey, who's okay with like leaving, go to another squad? But you don't always have that luxury, especially if you're a match director and you got so many other things going on.
Well, you don't do that whenever it's game time or right before game time. If it's like shortly after squatting opened up, I can understand doing that. Hey, I had something going on. I wasn't able to get in whenever it squatted, but that's fine. Hey, I want to squad with these guys, but I missed the mark. Right before you're supposed to shoot the match is not the time to approach the match director.
Oh, but it is.
So
that's the perfect time.
Speaking of people that approach,
hey, the child truck's here. This is here. Hey, they got a question. Hey, can you put me in squad 3 with my friend that I grew up with, and then we went to 3rd grade together? That'd be great. Like, thanks. Yeah, I'll work on it.
Thanks, dude. No, I'm gonna willfully be a dick and deny your request.
I would just respond with, hey, this is a perfect opportunity to meet new people.
Oh man. Yeah. Speaking of, so like I noticed when you're running the day and night, like you're in match director mode, right? You're moving with a purpose, you're putting out small fires. Even if nothing is going wrong, you're kind of walking around and kind of like anticipating and just watching the flow of the match, seeing where things are bunching up, all that good stuff. How long did it take for you to like kind of develop? I don't know. We're talking about customer service, but like for me, realizing that I don't have time to like engage casually with a bunch of people in conversation and I have to politely cut things off and keep it fucking moving. How long did it take? Maybe you already had it. For me, it's something I had to develop within like a few matches.
So like being a special forces guy in the leadership, you go to these other countries and like you got to build a rapport, you got to like keep it going with the partner force, but there's a deadline, there's a timeline or a time hack, I think I liken it to that, where it's like, hey, I'll come to a close on something. I'll acknowledge the person that's trying to talk to me, shake their hand, smile, and be like, and just give this statement of like, hey, buddy, I got to go take care of something really quick. I'll see you in a minute.
Yeah.
And that's the best way to do it, I think. But like as a match director, and honestly, the role as an RM at the same time, right? So you're basically trying to keep that thing going. So where it's got to go. Like where the transition points. Like, hey, this has to be like that. If there's, somebody just kind of bunched up, you have to keep that thing going. So it's definitely to a point where you're finding work. I think it's good to find work. RMs do this at USPSA matches. If they don't, they're kind of jacked up. But you need to be constantly finding work and like keeping the ROs going, keeping the staff flowing. There's nothing wrong with finishing a match early. There's nothing wrong. Yeah, dude, that's great. Like, but the time difference between the 3 o'clock finish on a day match and a 7 o'clock finish isn't really that much when you extrapolate the holdups and the squad hasn't started their walkthrough yet or gotten your stage brief, and people aren't in the shooting order. What I'm describing are things that happen on stage, and when you walk up as an MD RM, you're like, why are you guys not in your formal walkthrough? Oh, we haven't gotten your stage brief yet. Like, why? And you're like, okay, here, give me the stage brief. All right, your formal walkthrough. You can pull a squad off to the side, give them a stage brief, and as soon as that squad appears, guess what? You're in the 4-minute walkthrough.
Yeah.
And that's something like you're always trying to defeat these timelines. It's okay to finish early and moving with a purpose. Now, I would tell you that the pressures that we had on this last match were exactly that of time for the nighttime portion.
Yeah.
And that's a beast on its own. That I really didn't like that position, to be in that position. That was not that great. I think that everybody did very, very well though with that idea that like, hey, we gotta get this going. And I think that was because we had to beat that 11 o'clock time, right?
Yeah.
For the noise piece. So keeping people moving on that one, the nighttime portion was super critical. But again, we got to the end there, and I think that everybody just kind of like, oh man, I think it caught up to everybody like that last stage.
It did, dude. It did.
But no, it's you gotta keep moving, man. That's it. And knowing what's next is important, and being able to anticipate. What's really cool is if you got a staff that they know your intent, and they can carry out your intent, just like commander's intent, right? If they could push that, like it makes your job as an MD and RM so much easier. Like if you have a staff member that is just waiting to be told like what to do, like we shouldn't come up to somebody's working for you. A good gauge is like they change the targets out on their own. They take care of problems before they become problems. They adjust your steel before it becomes an issue on calibration. They check cables. Like, hey, this cable's this. Hey, give me a second. Hey, call the quartermaster. Hey, we got a cable. We got a thing. There's something going on. Not when it breaks, or not when it's getting Yankee, where it's like, oh man, it's not going to work for much longer. Having senior staff mates that like know, and those guys are your future RMs or future MDs. Those are the guys that make it so much more efficient, man. And the more people you can have like that at a match with your staff, your match will be like so much easier to run. It's like a mini you running around carrying out your intent. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Developing future leaders.
God, I forgot who I said this to. I was like, I don't I just know that all my problems could be solved if there were 7 other copies of myself running this match.
Oh, dude, it'd be crazy.
Oh man. Okay. Last question for me before I turn over to Matt. But Practice Score has an integrated payment system. Is that like the ideal setup for you in terms of receiving funds? And then just Practice Score in general, like what are some things in general that you like about it, or what are some things that you wish it would tweak to make your life a little easier?
So the integrated payment system is Stripe, and I think the first time I used it, I used to take cash for the matches or Venmo or PayPal. And what I like about that, it's not perfect. I don't think anything is perfect, even when you take cash or all that stuff. But what's good about it is like it takes that away from like that part of registration where somebody's trying to pay. It makes that stats officer or whoever's taking payments, it gives them something less to do. Like, hey, I don't have to worry about it. I verified the squad and the division you're shooting. All your information is correct. You're checked in and we're ready to go. Versus, okay, let me give you change. Let me give you this. All right, hey, here's the Venmo thing. All right, yeah, went through. It's really good for that. And if people pay up front, it's great. What it does really well at the end of the year, it helps you do your books. So you can go through and print out everything that happened from the matches, and you can use that as an entry into your tax log, depending on how you run it, however you run it. And it shows like how much money was taken in for the matches if you take everything on the stripe payment. So some things that I would like to see change with practice score. It's a little, it seems a little older right now. Like the functions, the buttonology on it is a little bit older. If you don't click save, like one of the things, if you go in and edit your, say for example, you go into edit mode for your match and you don't click the save, it'll literally, not change anything. I would like it to be like, hey, I made a little change. It automatically updates as it refreshes the page. I don't have to click the save button. The other thing that when you do the registration page, if you clone a match and you type in, say for example, you clone a match and you type in like the name of your match on the clone. When you go to the registration page, it clones the one from the match before and all the divisions from the match before. I would like it to automatically force you to redo the divisions, or it would in the registration, like, thank you for signing up. Thanks for signing up for the Brendan Souder Slingshot match 2024. I wanted to update to that, not have the original clone. Mm-hmm. Now, for all these things I'm talking about, there's other things too, but practice score is really good, man. Like it's actually really, really cool. I would say that it's helped me out quite a bit once I learned it. It's like learning, do you ever do DTS?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's like learning DTS. It's like learning DTS. Like I was a level 30, by the way. I was approving people's shit for like, CrossFit style for time out there. But it's definitely a system. It's not perfect, but it works for me, and it's made my life a lot easier. It actually makes it a lot easier for me. I can't complain. Honestly, I can't complain about it. So
yeah, there's definitely a learning curve. I would say for me, the master tablet, just some of the buttonology, like I was still reaching out to the previous match director, just being like, hey, I know you told me how to do this, but like how some of it isn't exactly logical,
no.
but it's still, it still works. And I know it now. So yeah, not a huge deal.
It's just something you got to fail through to kind of get, you got to do it a bunch of times and like learn it the hard way. I know it sucks, but you can watch all the videos. You can do it until you build a match, run a match, take payment on the match, score the match, and then post the match results out. Like it takes some growing pains.
You're not a match director until you fuck up stats at least once.
Yeah. Like give the wrong trophy to the person and stuff. Yeah, those kinds of things. No big deal.
Yeah. Growing pains.
Yeah.
Hey, so I kind of have quite a bit of experience with this part. Match sponsorships, reaching out to sponsors, and asking for support. And it can be very hard at times, and it can be very hard for certain companies to really support the match just where they are in their year, how much money they made, all that kind of stuff, how much money they have toward marketing. What are your thoughts on the current state of match sponsorships, and what have you noticed in terms of companies preferring to either give cash in support of the match or prizes, and what do you prefer?
This is a great question. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right. So first off, like whenever these guys give anything to the match, I feel like it's a blessing. I don't like to make the match critical of match sponsorship, for example. Like if that happens, I've already lost.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and some people would say like, hey, don't build a major match out unless you have a major match sponsor, because you need somebody to partner with on this to make it better. I like to make it an enhancing feature, not a critical feature. But I think that what we've gotten over the years has been great. We've had Velocity Systems has been with us for a long time, and they sponsored us when we were in the military doing Forces Commando. We've had uh, shit. We've had Taurus the last. I mean, Taurus. I'm a brand ambassador for Taurus, and they've basically given us firearms every match we run to put it out on the prize table. We had guys donate rifles and all these. Like, for me, Vortex was a big sponsor for us, and we've had Aimpoint and all these big companies. Whenever they put something on the prize table for the shooters, for me, that's good. I don't ask much to these guys. If they say, "Hey, what would you like?" We'll say, "Hey, can you put a couple of your products out there, and then send us some banners, and then we'll include you into the match announcement. We'll put your logo on a T-shirt, XYZ." But it's hard to ask these guys. There's so many other matches out there, man. Like, everybody's asking for something.
Oh yeah, and one of the things whenever they ask me, "Hey, what do you need for your match?" My typical response is, "What do you want me to showcase for you? Send me whatever you want to showcase. That way we can put it out there so everybody can see it." And whenever then they think about, okay, yeah, that's perfect. I know exactly what I want to send you then, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's great, man. That's better than giving me a bunch of shit and like, what do they get out of that? Like, they put a couple banners out, but if you're able to, like you said, product placement and showcase something, like, that's return on investment for marketing.
Yeah. And I think our predecessors in the sport, and Three Gun Nation, I think Three Gun Nation did a lot of good for the shooting sports at that time. And then it turned sour. And I think it kind of turned into, they thought they were bigger than the industry itself. And, for Three Gun Nation Nationals, I want to say the buy-in was, for a bronze level sponsorship, we'll call it, was like $10,000, either in cash or product, to be a title sponsor, $20,000 cash or product. And I'm just kind of making the levels of sponsorship up, but I know they had a tiered system, but they asked so much of the companies that at what point was there a return on investment from those companies, and did it really achieve anything for those companies? And the short answer, for some of them, absolutely. For a lot of them, they got quickly put out of business.
Yeah, so Pete was the only guy. Pete Brown, he was the only show in town that's ever gotten like competitive shooting at the way we know it, like televised, right? So having a TV deal, the things that Pete had to do to get on TV, man, he lost his life savings. Like, there's a lot of things that people don't know about Pete. Pete went off on a couple of competitive shooters in a forum and then kind of just killed it, right? The internet always wins. I would say, if you know Pete Brown, he put everything he possibly could put into Three Gun Nation, to the point where it drained him financially, and like, he had to call in for somebody else to invest into the company, which was Grizzly Targets.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it was Pete that destroyed it. It was somebody else that I won't name.
Right. So, but you get to the point where it's like, man, they put this shit on TV, man. It was fucking awesome to watch. It was exciting and stuff like that. And so putting those sponsors together and stuff like that, for the amount of money it was costing to get on TV and like the placement, it was kind of a really cool thing. But sustainability wise, because he was paying his staff to travel all up and down all over the United States with the Three Gun Nation trailer that sits here on my property, by the way, and this big ass truck. And dude, the stories the guys would tell me about, like, man, just making it, they were making it happen. So, dude, the stuff that he went through, like, man, God, dude, and the sponsorships and the product placement being on TV, like, it was phenomenal. My hat's off to him. He's like one of those guys, that got to the point where the shooters, handing a check to some professional shooter and they don't even say thank you, like a $25,000 check, like, yeah, cool. And they didn't say thank you. Like, man, that was a time where people were getting checks, Three Gun Nation.
$50,000 for the national championship.
Right.
Yeah.
So, with the last nationals that happened was down in Holt, and I helped like coordinate the match. And it was the match participation was like, man, it was crazy. I had to change price on it a couple times and like, all that, but it was a flash in the pan that had this arc, and then it went down. And the reason why, I think a lot of the reason why is because one, going to sponsorship, it was hard to sustain those levels of sponsorship, and a lot of money that came in for the sponsorship paid for his staff, paid for, they had salary staff on that organization. And
Yeah.
then people started running outlaw matches because they didn't pay the activity fees. It sounds like we're talking about somebody else now, right?
Mhm.
So, and then other things got created. It sounds like we're talking about somebody else now. So again, Three Gun Nation in the heyday, like they were killing it, man. But there was
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of money brought in and a lot of money spent. And just for Pete's sake, man, I don't know if I'll ever see this, but dude, like I used to like look at Three Gun Nation as like the Delta Force of like shooting sports, man. Like, holy shit, and then I got to see the inside of that thing at the end of it, and I was like, man, that sucks. All the hype around it.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah.
it's
And one of the other things that kind of showcased is the people who were in it for the sport itself and the people who were in it just for the paycheck.
absolutely,
And the people who were in it
absolutely,
for the sport are still around.
they are. Yeah, I ran into a guy that Greg Jordan. Greg Jordan?
Yep. And no, Greg is
Yeah,
awesome people. I love that dude. Like we shoot
yeah,
I've shot matches with him in Pennsylvania.
yeah. He's an awesome shooter. I ran into him at Carry Optics Nationals and a couple other places, but he was a big Three Gun Nation guy for for a really good shooter for a long time. And so just there's definitely it was definitely some goodness. But the sponsorship thing, man, is like what I try to do is I tell these companies like, hey, we'll have a tiered system. If you want to donate prizes, if you want the title sponsorship, this is what it is. And then sometimes they'll give money. Sometimes they'll pay towards match shirts. Sometimes they'll pay towards the trophies. And then, well, a lot of times now, like the new norm is they'll send products. In the say, hey, we got $5,000 buy-in. They'll send $5,000 in products, which is a very, very high end. Our stuff isn't. We don't ask for that normally, but guys will do it. They'll donate stuff like, hey, what do you need? And we'll say, hey, throw some optics. And then, for example, one year I think Vortex sent like, man, they sent so many optics and you know all kinds of stuff, like rangefinders, everything. And then we gave that out in soft match. It was like Vortex optics for everybody, Christmas. You
Travis
know,
Vogel is an
um,
amazing dude. Travis Vogel, he loves helping everybody.
yeah, they've him and Adam Maxwell hooked us up quite a bit.
Hmm.
We haven't hit them up in a while. And you know what's funny? It's like I'll see a big match sponsored by Vortex, and I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't ask them because they probably just donated a lot of stuff. But it depends, man. I just don't like to put it to be a critical factor at the match success because if you do that as a match director, a lot of these guys, they have other stuff that they're doing, and it's one of those things. Trying to get things shipped out for the matches, you got to stay on the sponsors because your match and your little op that you're doing isn't the only thing they got in their work. So it becomes definitely a communication thing. As a match
Hmm.
director, you really got to communicate often and early, and give deadlines and stuff like that. Tell them what your requirements are. But I'm just appreciative, like all the guys that come out and help us out, man. Like we've gotten a lot of support for the matches over the years. Even when I didn't know what the hell I was doing, man. Honestly, like guys just, yeah, we want to be a part of it. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm scared, but let's do it, and hell, we got it, got it done with those guys. So we're not sad about it.
Kind of the last question we got for you. And we all want feedback on how we perform, how we do things. I think it's a very important aspect. And as a match director, somebody who puts on matches or run things, or even just design stages, we want to get that direct feedback from our customer. And we want it so we can make it better for the next time. How do you prefer to receive that type of feedback?
First off, I'll tell you this. Nobody, and I mean nobody, will ever be more critical of me than me.
Mm-hmm.
So if a guy writes me an email or if a guy comes up to me at the match, I don't mind. What I don't like in general, not just the matches, is somebody to be a problem presenter and not a problem solver. If you present the problem, I want you to present a solution.
Yep.
Again, I go back to my Army career, like the guys on the team, like I would say, don't come to me with a problem, come to a solution. I promise you, even if I think you're a knucklehead, I'm going to try to see it your way. We'll try to figure it out, because not all the best ideas reside within your head as a leader,
Mhm.
right? So the match director. So, email's fine. At the end of the match is fine. When things are calmed down and like all the trophies are handed out and the prizes are and the beers are open, like that's fine. But not like in the middle of the match. It's like, hey, there's a better way to do this. Hey, this, that, and the other. Like those are the kind of things. It's like you're in the middle of a battle in Fallujah and somebody's telling you which way you should be flanking. You're like, hey, just give me a second. I need to get air on station. Let's give it a second. Let's let this develop a little bit. Because those things have happened in the past. I'm sure everybody's gotten it. In the middle of the match, somebody's come up and asked you, can we skip? Hey, we're waiting on squad 3. Can we skip them and go to the next stage?
Never
No,
works.
nope.
Oh God, no,
That just
no. It's like
backs everything all up.
it's like timeout. Who are you? What's your name, buddy? Okay, please don't do that. Just stay there, wait. We'll get it going. And it just makes it a mess. And we've had just random thing, but feedback is good. The feedback is great, man, because if you're not ready to get, I would rather somebody tell me that I'm wrong. And I know I can be wrong. I'm ready to be wrong all the time as a human, right? Especially as a match director, because you're going to like have things that don't go so great. And you want to get that feedback so that you can put it into this, that planning cycle for the next thing and make it even better the next time. So we like that. We like the email feedback. We like, hey, after the match is over, feedback. And we do an AAR after every match. And sometimes the staff, if they're newer guys, they're like, geez, were we that dicked up? It's like, no, we weren't. But like, you guys did great. These are things that we point out as a critical feedback for us as a team. And I had to remind guys that just got on with me. It's like, hey, this isn't a dig on you guys. This is us. These are the things we identified. Here's how we're going to fix it. When you AAR something, that's the most important thing you could do after it's over. Don't just high five and get out of there. Like figure out how it went, and then like, is there anything we can improve on? Identify those things, and then put them into the planning cycle for the next one. We do that internally too. So, like I said, nobody is more critical of me than me, and I could tell you straight up. It isn't until everybody's done and everything's safe, and I go to a Mexican restaurant and have a margarita, that I'm just like, fuck, okay, on to the next one. Let's do it again. But that's it in a nutshell. Email's fine. Just don't go on a rant about it on some forum that I can't do anything about it. At that point, you're just being ugly. Let's just tell me what it is. I promise I'll change it. I'll try to consider it.
And then you have sometimes people just complain to complain, or they want you to do something that maybe not everybody else. Maybe it's just for that one person, and you got to think about the masses, and they're only thinking about themselves.
100%. Hey, I want you to set up the stage that I'm really good at. Do this thing that I'm really good at, because that's what I'm really good at. That's what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that too. I've heard that more than I'd like to, but I don't. It's all good. I mean, I'll take it. I'll just laugh it off most of the time, and it just kind of make it go. There's a phenomenon that happens at all the matches, and I think this is a competitor mindset thing that certain people, certain psychological profiles have. Guys who complain about the match normally didn't do so well at the match.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Like, hey, I had a shitty match. This match sucked. It was trash. Don't like it. Right? The guy who wins the match, best match ever. Oh my God, I'm going to make you a medal. Best match director, best match ever. This was the greatest thing ever. Even when in your mind you knew as a match director, like, man, some of these things are kind of dicked up. The guy who wins had the best time ever. Can't take him off cloud 9. He's a winner. That's it. Those are the guys I kind of watch out for, those two spectrums, just because there's so much of a distance in between that psychological profile is like, okay, you probably won't tell me the truth about how the match actually went. Does that make sense?
No,
Yeah,
that
it
makes
does.
total sense. I've experienced that. I've had that same problem, but whenever you sit back and analyze, well, was it really a bad match, or was it a bad match? Was it a bad match to me just because of my performance? And then another aspect too, who was I squatted with? Did that affect the outcome of things? Did that really change my perspective? Like, we're talking about the last match I shot, it wasn't a great performance for me, but quite honestly, that was one of the most fun matches I've shot in 10 years. And it was one of the best squads I've had in 10 years. Why? I was surrounded by really good people. I had a lot of fun. Everything was dynamic. Not one stage was the same. Everything had a different theme to it. And, it's really the mindset you go into it. And I think it comes down to a level of maturity, and being able to analyze yourself and analyze the match in an objective fashion. And not everybody's equipped with that.
They're not. I mean, but the guys who are just kind of like you're talking about, like, hey, these guys are good to shoot with. They're, they're open minded. They're active. Like, those guys know what a good match is, and they'll say, hey, that was like the same stage over and over again. Or they'll say, hey, well, it was a little bit too much of this and that, and I'll take that feedback, and I'm like, man, okay, cool. Like this last match we did, a lot of physical stuff in the daytime, and some people liked it because that was what they excelled at, and some people were like, I would rather more shooting. So those kinds of things, those are feedbacks. Who are like, okay, cool. Well, this guy didn't win the match, and he wasn't the worst. So then when I see that, I'm going to take feedback no matter what it is. Bottom line, right? Somebody's greatest match ever, cool. Somebody says it's the worst match ever, I'm going to take that as well. The ones I'm really starting to turn the volume up on, like where I'm like, okay, like the little tweak of like, hey, could you make a couple more technical stages? Can you make a couple more stages that have a slightly higher round count, right? So I can get a mag change in there. Or can you make some unloaded starts? Like, oh, that's cool. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, those are things like, can you put some weird positions in there? Because I would like to, whatever. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So some weird positions are coming up in the next match. I'm just telling you guys.
Ready for it.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious. So you talked about you starting off directing matches. The first time I threw one on, like you said something. You were like, I'm scared, but let's do it. And that was pretty much my motto the first few, and then I ran. But at the end of the day, like I'm just watching, guys and gals walking away, and they all like, regardless how they shot, for the most part, most of them are very happy. Like they just spent a day on the range with all their friends. I mean, is that a big part of why you should keep doing this? Just because, do you see the same thing that I see? That like people fucking love to go out and compete on weekends. They love to go out and shoot with their buddies. And for the most part, they're appreciative of people putting on these types of matches.
I would say, metaphorically speaking, to me, the match is like putting presents around the Christmas tree, and then having people open it up and smiles, and that's them shooting the match, and they're like, "Oh, thank you! Like this was really cool." Yeah. It's like putting on Christmas. It's like, "Hey, this is really cool! Holy shit!" For me, I get a big like satisfaction and feel like I got a purpose to give people a place that they can go to and get that experience, and then come out like, holy shit, that was really cool. That was really fun to shoot. I got to hang out, like you said, I got guns all day with my friends, and seeing that smile. That's why I keep doing it. I mean, I could just stop doing this and do training and probably make a ton of money doing that and go right into the government contract world. But dude, I fucking love running matches, man. I fucking love it. Like it's so much excitement, all the planning and the challenge going into it, running the match, and then just like, boom, it's over. It's like, man, it's like, again, like opening Christmas presents and just like seeing everybody's face. Like, wow. Like that to me is like absolutely why I do it.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that you made that analogy, because I told someone that it's like throwing a kid a birthday party. But essentially the same thing.
It is.
But we both know there's a chance that the kid is gonna open the Christmas present, not like what they get, and then just run off screaming. But that
Yeah,
hasn't
yeah,
that hasn't happened to me yet. So we've talked about a wide variety of things. We talked about planning, we talked about money. But is there anything else you'd like to touch on before we sign off?
yeah. So I'm gonna write a paper on Matchenomics and define it, and then have basically like a live document that people can go to, and they can reference like, here's the cost estimate worksheet for your matches, and I'll have like pricing on things that make sense, right? So you could do a cost estimate worksheet. Hey, you know what? You're thinking about running a match. Guess what? Matchenomics, do this cost estimate worksheet, fill this out, and then at the end of the day, if you look yourself in the mirror and you still want to run this match, then use that as a document to show you the quantifiable numbers that says, hey, we're going to make it out with our shirts on our back, or hey, we'll have money to put back into the club and to the equipment. So there'll be basically a paper on it, like maybe a 4 to 5 like explanation of the origin of it, like how it works, and then there'll be a document that everybody will have access to, and everybody can use it for planning purposes. So that's it. And then most of the people that would probably look at this are probably in your area. The Cinco de Mayo match, the registration's open right now. We've opened up 75 slots out of the 150. I would say that guys should sign up for that sooner rather than later because it'll fill up quick. Mm-hmm. And then I think once we get to somewhere in January, we will open remaining slots and get that thing filled. But that's it, man, dude. I'm glad you guys had me back on, so appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. We'll throw the link up for the for that match. Always a good time, shooting with you and your crew. And then once you write that paper, like we'll share that as well. But for everyone listening, like if you're listening, then you go shoot matches on weekends. Thank your match director and thank your volunteers. I mean, just not just we've talked about ROs, we've talked about the entire ensemble that's responsible for putting on these matches. And if there's one thing I've learned as a match director, it's that I'm constantly surprised at how willing people are to give me their time and their energy in order to like support. Like it becomes a community's match after a while if it's done correctly. But we hope that you've enjoyed listening to us and talking about all different aspects of match management. If you have any questions, reach out to Brendan, reach out to myself. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.